The Korean billionaire CEO with his mistress ignored his wife's call. He never knew it was her final goodbye. "Don't answer that," Sumin whispered. Her crimson lipstick smudged as she unbuttoned Jin Ho's shirt in the dim light of his executive office. The Seoul skyline glittered behind them like a galaxy of stars that Jin Ho had conquered one by one. His phone illuminated on the black marble desk, Mi-suk's name and photo appearing for the third time that evening. Jin Ho silenced it without a second glance. "My wife knows better than to interrupt during the Busan negotiations," he said, pulling Sumin closer as her jasmine perfume enveloped him. The phone vibrated once more with a voicemail notification. Jin Ho turned it face down. "The merger won't wait for domestic matters." "She never calls this late." Sumin hesitated, her fingers pausing at his collar. "Because she knows I'm always working," Jin Ho replied, his hands finding her waist. "That's why I have a multi-billion-dollar empire and a marriage that exists only on paper." 20 hours later, those same hands that had caressed his mistress were now trembling as Jin Ho crashed through the doors of a rural hospital, his designer suit stained with his wife's blood. The doctor's words hammered against his consciousness. Stage 4. Metastasized. Too late for intervention. Mi-suk lay unconscious, her once vibrant body now frail against the white hospital sheets. Jin Ho collapsed into a chair beside her bed, his empire suddenly meaningless. "I finally listened to your message," he whispered, tears streaming down his face for the first time since his father's funeral decades ago. "Why didn't you tell me in person?" Mi-suk's eyes fluttered open briefly, her voice barely audible. "I tried for months. You never had time. What would you do if you discovered the most important call of your life was the one you deliberately ignored? How many moments have we all missed while chasing the wrong dreams?" The glass and steel tower of Park Industries stood 78 stories high in Gangnam's financial district, a monument to Jin Ho Park's ruthless ambition and brilliant strategic mind. But that tower was built on the foundation of a broken home and promises long forgotten. Mi-suk Park stood barefoot by the floor-to-ceiling windows of their penthouse apartment, her silk nightgown providing little warmth against the chill that seemed to emanate from the walls themselves. It was nearly midnight, and Jin Ho still hadn't come home. 20 years. 20 years of marriage that had begun with passion and slowly dissolved into two strangers sharing an address. Mi-suk pressed her hand against her chest, feeling the pain that had been growing there for months. Pain she had ignored until yesterday's doctor's appointment made ignoring it impossible. "Mrs. Park, I need to be candid with you," Dr. Kim had said, her expression grave as she reviewed the test results. "The cancer is advanced and has spread to multiple organs. Without immediate and aggressive treatment, your prognosis is—" She had paused, her professional demeanor cracking slightly. "You have months, not years." Mi-suk had nodded, a bitter smile nearly escaping her lips. Months, not years. In her marriage to Jin Ho, time was the only currency that mattered, and he had made it abundantly clear that his time was too valuable to waste on her. "Is there someone who can help support you through this?" Dr. Kim had asked. "Your husband, perhaps? Family nearby?" "My husband is very busy," Mi-suk had replied, the practiced smile she'd perfected over 20 years sliding into place. "But I'll make sure he knows." That had been yesterday. Mi-suk had tried to tell Jin Ho 3 times since the appointment. Each time he had been on a call, in a meeting, or reviewing projections with Sumin, his executive assistant, who seemed to occupy more of his time and attention than his own wife. The first attempt had been at breakfast. Jin Ho had been scrolling through emails, coffee growing cold beside him. "Jin Ho, I need to talk to you about something important," she'd said, sliding into the chair across from him. He'd glanced up briefly. "Can it wait? The Busan market opens in 20 minutes, and I need to monitor the shipping merger." The second attempt had been a text message. "We need to talk. It's urgent." His response had come 6 hours later. "In meetings all day. Tomorrow." The third attempt had been a dinner reservation at the restaurant where he'd proposed 20 years ago. Jin Ho had canceled 2 hours before. "Busan conference call," Sumin had explained when she called the restaurant to cancel the reservation Mi-suk had made weeks ago. Mi-suk had stopped feeling jealousy years ago. Jealousy required hope, and hope had died slowly over the years, suffocated by indifference. The sound of the private elevator made her turn. Jin-ho Park stepped into their home at 12:47 a.m. His custom Tom Ford suit remained impeccably crisp despite the late hour. At 52, he was everything the business magazines called him: brilliant, ruthless, captivating. Salt and pepper hair perfectly styled, angular jawline, eyes the color of cold steel. He had built Park Industries from his father's modest company into a global conglomerate worth $23 billion, and it showed in every confident step he took. Sumin followed him in, her stilettos clicking on the marble floor. She carried a tablet and was discussing tomorrow's acquisition meeting, her voice low and intimate in a way that made Mi-suk feel like an intruder in her own home. The markets open in Busan at 9 a.m. their time, which gives us just under 7 hours to finalize the shipping merger, Sumin was saying as she swiped through documents on her tablet. The board expects at least a 20% projected return in the first quarter. Make it 25, Jin-ho replied, loosening his tie but not removing it. I want them to know we're not coming to the table with conservative numbers. Neither acknowledged Mi-suk standing by the window, her arms wrapped around herself, her presence a footnote in the penthouse they all occupied. Jin-ho, Mi-suk said softly. Can we talk, please? He glanced at her as if noticing her presence for the first time. The Busan presentation needs finishing tonight. It's already afternoon there. It's important. Mi-suk tried again, her voice barely above a whisper. So is this. Everything is important, Mi-suk. That's how business works. He moved past her toward his study, Sumin trailing behind with her ever-present tablet and perfectly professional smile that never quite reached her eyes. It's about my health, Mi-suk said, the words escaping before she could stop them. Jin-ho paused mid-step, turning slowly. Your health? What about it? Mi-suk felt her cheeks flush. Not like this. She hadn't wanted to tell him like this. With his assistant standing there, with him halfway to another meeting, another deal, another place where Mi-suk couldn't follow. I have cancer, she said, hand moving to her chest where the pain lived. It's advanced. Stage 4. For a moment, something flashed across Jin-ho's face. Surprise, confusion, perhaps even concern. But it vanished so quickly, Mi-suk wondered if she'd imagined it. How long have you known? He asked, his voice oddly detached. I got the diagnosis yesterday. Yesterday? And you're only telling me now? Mi-suk felt a spark of anger ignite in her chest. I've been trying to tell you since yesterday, Jin-ho. You never have time. Jin-ho checked his watch. We'll discuss this tomorrow. I have the Busan team waiting. The doctor says it's terminal. Mi-suk pressed on. I need treatment. I need support. Jin-ho nodded curtly. I'll have my assistant arrange for the best specialists. We'll get you whatever medical support you need. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have a presentation to finish. And just like that, he was gone, disappearing into his study with Sumin, the door closing behind them with a soft, definitive click. Mi-suk stood there, invisible once again. She had become a beautiful ornament in this museum of wealth and success. Something to be maintained, but never truly seen. Have you ever felt like you were drowning while the person who promised to be your lifeline stared at their phone instead? Have you ever realized that the life you built with someone exists only in your memory, while they've moved on without ever leaving? The penthouse had 17 rooms, yet Mi-suk felt she couldn't breathe in any of them. She walked slowly to their bedroom suite, the one they no longer shared. Jin-ho slept in his study most nights, or claimed to. Mi-suk had stopped asking where he really was after catching him and Sumin in an intimate conversation 6 months ago. Heads bent together, his hand lingering on the small of her back. She's just my assistant, Jin-ho had explained dismissively. Don't be dramatic. In the bathroom, she stared at her reflection. 45 years old. Black hair falling in waves past her shoulders. Eyes that once sparkled with music and dreams. She barely recognized herself anymore. The concert cellist who had once filled concert halls across Asia before giving it all up for love. For him, she remembered the first time they met at a charity gala where she had been the featured performer. Jin-ho had approached her afterward, his eyes alight with something she'd mistaken for appreciation of her music. You play like you're speaking directly to each person's soul, he'd said, handing her a glass of champagne. It's a rare gift to make something so complex seem so intimate. What Mi-suk hadn't realized then was that Jin-ho approached everything as a puzzle to be solved, a system to be optimized. He'd been analyzing her performance, not feeling it. That distinction had taken years to understand. Her phone sat on the counter, and she picked it up with trembling hands. She had composed these words 100 times in her mind. Now she needed to say them aloud, even if he wouldn't listen in person. Mi-suk pressed record and began to speak, tears streaming down her face. Jin-ho, it's me. I know you're busy. You're always busy, but I need to tell you something important. I've been carrying this diagnosis alone since yesterday. I have terminal cancer. The doctor says without aggressive treatment, I have months, not years. But even with treatment, the prognosis isn't good. Her voice broke, but she continued. I can't remember the last time you looked at me like I mattered, like I was more than just another obligation. I thought when we married that our love would grow stronger. We were so happy once, weren't we? 20 years ago, I believed that what we had was special enough to weather any storm. But 20 years later, I'm still waiting for the man I fell in love with to return. And I can't wait anymore. Not with the time I have left. Mi-suk took a deep breath, memories flooding back. Jin-ho teaching her to drive his sports car during their first summer together. Jin-ho surprising her with midnight walks along the Han River. Jin-ho holding her hand through her mother's funeral. Where had that man gone? So, I'm leaving for my grandmother's village in Gangwon province. By the time you hear this, if you ever do, I'll already be gone. I want to spend whatever time I have left where the air is clean and where I can see the stars at night. I'm taking my cello. I want to play again before it's too late. I want to remember who I was before I became just an accessory to your success. She wiped her eyes. Don't look for me, Jin-ho. Not because I hate you, but because I need to find myself again. I need to remember what it feels like to matter to someone. I loved you. I really did. I loved you enough to wait for 20 years, hoping you'd love me back. But I don't have 20 more years. I don't even have 2. Goodbye. She hit send before she could change her mind. The message uploaded as a voice note to Jin-ho's phone. The timestamp read 1:15 a.m. 3 floors below in his private study, Jin-ho sat with Sumin reviewing acquisition strategies. His phone buzzed on the desk. He saw Mi-suk's name flash on the screen. Then another notification from the Busan office layered over it. Without thinking, he swiped away all notifications. He didn't have time for whatever Mi-suk wanted to discuss. Could wait until morning. As Sumin leaned closer to point out a clause in the contract, her perfume enveloped him. Her hand brushed his, lingering a moment too long. Jin-ho looked up at her, the tension between them palpable. We should finish the presentation, she whispered, but made no move to return to her seat. Jin-ho knew he should stop what was about to happen. He thought fleetingly of Mi-suk upstairs, of the diagnosis she had shared. But those thoughts seemed distant, unreal, compared to the immediate presence of Sumin, who understood his world, who spoke his language of acquisitions and power moves. The presentation can wait, Jin-ho said, reaching for her. Earlier that evening, the two of them had stood in front of Mi-suk as she revealed her terminal diagnosis. Now, in the shadowy confines of his study, they crossed a line that couldn't be uncrossed, their betrayal complete. Upstairs, unaware, Mi-suk packed a single suitcase. Not the designer clothes Jin-ho bought her for galas and business dinners. Simple things, jeans, sweaters, the few items that still felt like her. She had been saving money for 3 years, small amounts from her personal account that she had quietly moved into a separate fund. Enough to disappear, enough to start over. She placed her wedding ring on the nightstand beside a framed photo from their wedding day. They had looked so happy then, so full of promise. Jin-ho smiling down at her as if she were the only person in the world. When had that gaze turned cold? At 3:22 a.m., the penthouse was silent. Jin-ho was still in his study, Sumin having finally left an hour earlier. Mi-suk walked down the hallway one last time, pausing outside his door. She could hear him on a video call, his voice sharp and decisive, commanding executives halfway across the country. For a moment, her hand hovered over the door handle. Should she try one more time? One final attempt to make him see her, hear her, choose her? The projected growth for the shipping merger exceeds our initial forecasts by 15%. Jin-ho was saying, I want us aggressive on this. Double our investment position. Mi-suk lowered her hand. He wouldn't hear her now. He never had. She didn't say goodbye in person. She knew if she saw his face, she might lose her courage. The service elevator took her down to the parking garage where a taxi waited, engine running quietly. She had arranged everything carefully, making sure no one would know she was leaving until it was too late to stop her. As the car pulled away from the building that had been her prison disguised as paradise, Mi-suk looked back once. The penthouse glowed like a beacon in the night sky, beautiful and cold, just like her marriage. Where to, ma'am? The driver asked. East, Mi-suk replied, one hand resting protectively on her chest where the pain lived. To Gangwon province, as far as you can take me. The tension is building, isn't it? Can you feel the weight of 20 years of neglect crushing down on a woman who once had everything, except the one thing she truly needed? Can you sense the approaching collision between ambition and mortality? Between wealth and worth? Jin-ho worked until dawn, never once checking his personal messages. The Busan shipping merger was all that mattered. A $2.8 billion acquisition that would expand Park Industries' reach across Southeast Asia. He had been pursuing this deal for 16 months. Nothing could distract him now. When he finally went upstairs at 6:15 a.m., he collapsed into bed in his private room, exhausted and vaguely troubled by the news of Mi-suk's diagnosis. He told himself he'd make it right somehow. More money for her treatment, the best oncologists in the country, perhaps a private nurse once the Busan deal closed. That was what being a good provider meant, wasn't it? Jin-ho fell into a restless sleep, dreaming of profit margins and stock projections and boardrooms. He didn't notice that Mi-suk's bedroom door was open across the hall, her closet partially empty, her presence already fading. The voice message sat unheard on his phone. A goodbye he hadn't bothered to receive. A confession of love and loss and terminal illness that he was still too blind to see. By the time the morning sun broke over Seoul's skyline, Mi-suk was already driving east toward the mountains of Gangwon province in a rental car, carrying her cello and the fragments of her broken heart, leaving behind a man who had everything except what truly mattered. Jin-ho woke at noon, disoriented. He never slept past 7. His head pounded from too little sleep and too much whiskey. He showered, dressed with his usual precision, and went downstairs expecting to find coffee already prepared. The subtle signs of Mi-suk's quiet presence that he had taken for granted for 20 years. The kitchen was dark and empty. No coffee, no breakfast, no Mi-suk moving silently through the space like a ghost he had learned to ignore. Mi-suk, he called out, his voice echoing through the cavernous penthouse. Nothing. Jin-ho checked his watch. The board meeting for the Busan acquisition was in 60 minutes. No time to wonder where she was. Probably at a doctor's appointment. He'd have his assistant check later. He headed to the kitchen to make his own coffee, an unfamiliar task that left him irritated. As the machine gurgled to life, he noticed something was missing. The small jade figurine of a cellist that had always sat on the counter. A gift he'd given Mi-suk on their first anniversary when he'd still remembered such dates. A spark of unease ignited in his chest. Jin-ho took the stairs 2 at a time, heading for Mi-suk's bedroom. The door stood open, and immediately he knew something was wrong. The room was too tidy, too still, as if it had been prepared for a long absence. He checked her closet. Some of her clothes were missing from the hangers. Not the designer gowns and tailored suits he'd bought her. Those remained untouched. But the simple items she wore when she thought no one was looking. Jeans, sweaters, comfortable shoes, those were gone. Her favorite books were gone from the nightstand. Her cello, the handcrafted instrument he had bought her for their 5th anniversary, was missing from its stand in the corner. On her dresser, glinting in the midday light, lay her wedding ring. Beside it, the photo from their wedding day, the glass now spiderwebbed with cracks as though it had been gripped too tightly before being set down for the last time. A cold feeling spread through his chest, something he didn't recognize at first because he had spent so many years refusing to feel anything at all. Jin-ho called his head of security. "Where is my wife?" "Sir, I assumed she was with you." The overnight security footage shows her leaving at 3:40 a.m. in a taxi. She had a suitcase and her cello case. "We thought you knew. You let my wife leave in the middle of the night with a suitcase, and no one thought to inform me?" Jin-ho's voice rose with each word. "Mr. Park, with all due respect, Mrs. Park is not a prisoner. She's free to come and go as she pleases, and you've made it clear in the past that you didn't want to be disturbed with domestic matters." Jin-ho hung up and stood in the middle of her empty room, truly seeing it for the first time. Pale blue walls she had chosen herself. Photographs of her family, her music teachers, her performances. None of him. There wasn't a single photograph of them together. Not one. How had he never noticed that before? His phone buzzed with 32 messages from Soo-min about the board meeting, the Busan merger, decisions that needed his immediate attention. He stared at the screen, and for the first time in his professional life he didn't care. He scrolled past Soo-min's messages and saw it. A voice note from Misuk sent at 1:15 a.m. 14 hours ago. His finger hovered over it. Something told him that once he pressed play, everything would change. He pressed play. Misuk's voice filled the silence of her abandoned room, soft and broken and achingly beautiful. Jin-ho sank onto her bed as she spoke, each word a dagger finding its mark in the heart he thought had been buried too deep to reach. "Jin-ho, it's me. I know you're busy. You're always busy, but I need to tell you something important. I've been carrying this diagnosis alone since yesterday." The world stopped. Time fractured. Jin-ho's breath caught in his throat. "I have terminal cancer. The doctor says without aggressive treatment, I have months, not years." Jin-ho closed his eyes, a wave of shame washing over him. She had needed him last night, and he had been with Soo-min. "I can't remember the last time you looked at me like I mattered." Jin-ho's mind flashed to 20 years of memories he had ignored. Misuk smiling at him over breakfast, trying to tell him about a composition she was working on. Misuk dressed elegantly for a charity gala, waiting for a compliment that never came. Misuk reaching for his hand in the car, then slowly pulling away when he didn't respond. Misuk fading, dimming, disappearing right in front of him while he was too busy building an empire to notice he was destroying his home. "I loved you. I really did." The past tense shattered him. Loved, not love. Loved as in finished, as in over, as in he had killed something precious through sheer neglect. When the message ended, Jin-ho sat in the silence. And for the first time since he was a child watching his mother cry over his father's affairs, he wept. Deep, wrenching sobs that tore through him like a storm breaking through stone. He had become his father, the man he had sworn never to emulate. Cold, distant, caring more about success than the people who loved him. Misuk had loved him for 20 years. She had loved him, and he had treated that love like it was worthless. His phone rang. Soo-min. He rejected the call. She called again. And again. Jin-ho answered on the fourth ring. "You're fired." "What?" "Jin-ho, we have the board meeting in 20 minutes. "The merger." "I don't care about the merger. I don't care about the board. I don't care about any of it. You're fired." Soo-min, effective immediately. "After last night? You can't just." "Last night was a mistake. The biggest in a long line of mistakes I've made. You were never anything more than someone who made it easy for me to ignore my wife. That ends now." He hung up before she could respond and called his chief operating officer. "Min-jun, cancel everything. Every meeting, every call, every commitment for the next month. Tell the board I'm taking emergency leave. Sir, the Busan merger closes in 3 days. If you're not there, then it doesn't close. Then it doesn't close. But that's a $2.8 billion. Some things are more important than money." He had never said those words before, had never believed them. But hearing Misuk's voice, learning of her cancer, telling him goodbye, had cracked something open inside him that he couldn't close again. Jin-ho called his top private investigator, a former intelligence officer who specialized in finding people who didn't want to be found. "I need you to find my wife, Misuk Park." She left early this morning, heading to Gangwon province. Her grandmother had a home in a village near Sokcho. I need to know exactly where she is by tonight. That's a tight timeline, Mr. Park. Triple your usual fee. I don't care what it costs. Find her. Jin-ho spent the afternoon pacing the penthouse, listening to Mi-suk's voice message over and over, memorizing every word, every pause, every breath. How had he missed the pain in her voice all these years? How had he failed to notice as she slowly disappeared? He walked through the penthouse, seeing it with new eyes. The music room Mi-suk had asked for that he had turned into a home office. The garden she had wanted on the terrace that he dismissed as impractical. The quiet dinners she had tried to arrange, conversations he had shut down with, "Not now, I'm busy." He had taken a woman who lived for beauty and creation and locked her in a glass tower with nothing but his indifference for company. The investigator called at 6:42 p.m. I found her. Coastal village called Jumunjin, near Gangneung. She's staying in her grandmother's old Hanok house. The locals say she arrived this morning, carrying only a suitcase and a cello case. The house has been empty for years, but she still had a key. Address: 93 Hyunro, at the end of the village road near the cliffs. It's the traditional house with the blue tile roof. Jin-ho didn't pack, didn't plan. He got in his car and started driving east, the sunset casting long shadows as he left Seoul behind. His mind raced with what he would say. Apologies that seemed too small for the damage he had caused. Promises that sounded hollow even to his own ears. How did you convince someone to give you another chance when you had wasted 20 years of chances? The highway stretched before him, darkness falling as he pushed the car faster. His phone rang constantly. Board members, executives, lawyers, all demanding to know why he had abandoned the Busan merger. He ignored them all. For the first time in his adult life, Jin-ho Park wasn't thinking about money or power or his next conquest. He was thinking about a woman with sad eyes who used to look at him like he hung the moon, and a diagnosis that meant their time was measured in months, not years. Have you ever had that moment when you realize everything you've been chasing isn't worth the price you've paid? When the empire you've built turns to dust in your hands because you've sacrificed the only thing that truly matters. Jin-ho was having that moment now, racing down the highway while his phone lit up with calls from a world he suddenly couldn't remember why he had wanted so badly. Jin-ho arrived in Jumunjin just after midnight, a small coastal village where the sea breeze carried the scent of salt and memories. The kind of place Mi-suk would choose, where nature's beauty surrounded you, the kind of place they had visited during their honeymoon when he had still seen her, really seen her. He remembered walking along the shore with her, listening as she pointed out how the waves created different rhythms as they crashed against the rocks. The ocean plays its own symphony, she had said, her face alight with wonder. He had kissed her then, captivated by her ability to find music everywhere. When had he stopped listening? When had success become more intoxicating than her smile? The Hanok house sat nestled among pine trees overlooking the East Sea. Traditional curved roof with blue tiles, stone foundation, wooden lattice doors. A small garden already showing signs of Mi-suk's touch with potted herbs and wildflowers arranged by the entrance. Jin-ho parked at the end of the gravel path and sat in his car for nearly 30 minutes, gathering courage. When he finally approached the house, all the lights were out. It was too late to knock. He would come back in the morning. As he turned to leave, a sound from inside stopped him cold. It wasn't just any sound. It was a moan of pain. Jin-ho rushed to the door and pounded on it. Mi-suk, Mi-suk, are you all right? No answer, but another cry of distress. He tried the handle. Locked. Without hesitation, he slammed his shoulder against the door until the old wood gave way. The house was dark except for a light spilling from the bedroom. Jin-ho followed it and found Mi-suk curled on the floor, her nightgown damp with sweat, her face contorted in agony. Jin-ho. Her voice was weak with shock. How did you? Don't talk. I'm calling an ambulance. He knelt beside her, cradling her in his arms as he dialed emergency services. Her skin was burning with fever, her breathing labored. 119. What's your emergency? My wife is seriously ill. She has terminal cancer and she's in extreme pain. Please send someone quickly. Sir, what's your location? Jinho realized he didn't even know the full address. Jumunjin Village, 93 Hionaro. A traditional Hanok house near the cliffs. An ambulance is being dispatched. Stay on the line. Is your wife conscious? Yes, but she's very weak. He turned to Misuk, brushing damp hair from her forehead. Misuk, the ambulance is coming. Hold on. Please hold on. Her eyes, clouded with pain, fixed on his face. The cancer, she whispered. The pain is worse. I thought I'd have more time before. We'll get you to the hospital. The best doctors. I promise. The words tumbled out desperately. Just stay with me. Stay with me. 30 minutes later, they were racing toward the Gangneung Medical Center. Sirens blaring. Misuk's hand clutched in his, her skin burning with fever. Why did you come? She asked, her voice barely audible over the wail of the sirens. I heard your message, Jinho said, his throat tight. I'm so sorry, Misuk. I've been blind. So completely blind. A faint, sad smile touched her lips. It doesn't matter now. It does matter. It's all that matters. Jinho leaned closer, his tears falling onto their clasped hands. I'm going to fix this. I'm going to make everything right. Some things can't be fixed, Jinho. Not even with your billions. Not with money. With time, with change, with love. The word felt foreign on his tongue, a language he had forgotten how to speak. Misuk's eyes drifted closed, her grip on his hand weakening. Misuk, stay awake. Look at me. Her eyelids fluttered. I'm tired, Jinho. So tired of trying. Then let me try. Let me be the one who tries this time. The ambulance screeched to a halt at the emergency entrance. Doors flew open and suddenly Misuk was being lifted away from him, surrounded by medical staff speaking in urgent tones. Advanced metastatic carcinoma, severe pain crisis, prepare oncology and palliative care consult. Jinho followed, desperate not to lose sight of her. A nurse blocked his path. Sir, you need to wait here. They're taking her for immediate assessment and pain management. That's my wife. I need to be with her. The nurse's expression was sympathetic but firm. There's a waiting room through those doors. Someone will update you as soon as possible. Misuk disappeared behind swinging doors, and Jinho stood frozen, his hands trembling. For 4 hours, he sat in the waiting room, staring at the same water stain on the ceiling without seeing it. For 4 hours, he bargained with ancestors he hadn't honored in decades. Take everything. The company, the money, all of it. Just give us more time. His phone had died hours ago. No one knew where he was. The empire he had built could be crumbling for all he knew. And for the first time in his life, Jinho didn't care. The only thing that mattered was behind those doors, fighting against a disease that his billions couldn't bribe away. The oncologist found him at dawn, exhaustion etched in the lines of her face. Mr. Park. Jinho stood on shaky legs. My wife. Your wife's cancer is very advanced. Stage 4 lung cancer with metastasis to the liver, bones, and brain. We've managed to control her pain for now, but I need to be honest with you, this is terminal. Without treatment, she has weeks, not months. With aggressive palliative treatment, perhaps a few months. But there is no cure at this stage. Jinho collapsed back into the chair, the full reality crashing down on him. I didn't know, he whispered. She tried to tell me, but I didn't listen. The doctor's expression softened slightly. Many patients hide their symptoms, Mr. Park. Sometimes from themselves as well. Can I see her? She's sedated now, but yes, she's been moved to a private room. I should warn you, we've started her on strong pain medications. She may drift in and out of consciousness. Misuk's hospital room was quiet except for the beeping of monitors, bathed in the soft light of dawn. Jinho approached the bed slowly. Misuk lay still, her face relaxed in drug-induced sleep, her body seeming smaller somehow, diminished by disease and medication. Her black hair spread across the pillow like spilled ink. Jinho sat beside her bed and gently took her hand. Felt so small in his, so fragile. I'm here, he whispered. I'm so sorry I'm late. I'm so sorry, but I'm here now. And I'm not going anywhere. For 3 days, Jin-ho never left the hospital. He slept in the chair beside Mi-suk's bed, waking whenever she stirred. He learned about cancer stages and treatment options, about palliative care and pain management. He spoke to specialists across the country, across the world, desperate for a miracle he knew didn't exist. His phone remained off. Park Industries continued without him, managed by executives who sent increasingly panicked emails to an account he no longer checked. On the 4th day, Mi-suk was strong enough to sit up, the pain temporarily managed by the medications flowing through the fore in her arm. "You're still here," she said, surprise in her voice. "I'll always be here. From now on." Mi-suk studied his face, the dark circles under his eyes, the stubble on his cheeks, the rumpled clothes he'd been wearing for days. "You look terrible," she said, a ghost of her old smile touching her lips. "I've never been better," Jin-ho replied, and meant it. That evening, a nurse brought Mi-suk's cello to her room at Jin-ho's request. "The doctor said it might be good therapy," Jin-ho explained, "when you're feeling stronger." Mi-suk ran her fingers over the polished wood, tears filling her eyes. "I haven't really played in years," she admitted. "Not seriously. I know. I'm sorry I took that from you." She looked up at him. "You didn't take it. I gave it up. I chose to." "Why?" "Because I thought being the perfect wife to Jin-ho Park was more important than being Mi-suk the cellist. I thought if I did everything right, you might see me again." Jin-ho's heart contracted painfully. "I see you now," he whispered. "I wish it hadn't taken this to make me see you." For the first time since their marriage began to crumble, they talked, really talked, about their hopes at the beginning, about where things went wrong, about the life Mi-suk had imagined and the empire Jin-ho had built instead. "I wanted children," Mi-suk said quietly, "but you were always too busy. Always one more deal, one more year to establish the company. Until it was too late." Jin-ho had no answer for that. No way to recover the years they had lost, the family they might have had. "What can I do?" he asked finally. "Tell me what you want, and I'll make it happen." Mi-suk was silent for a long moment. "Take me home," she said at last. "Not to Seoul. Here. To my grandmother's house by the sea. I want to hear the waves while I still can. I want to play my cello on the cliffs. I want to die where I can see the stars, not fluorescent hospital lights." The doctors advised against it. The oncologist pulled Jin-ho aside, her expression grave. "Without constant medical supervision, her pain will become unbearable as the disease progresses. She needs to be where we can help her." "Then I'll bring the medical supervision to her," Jin-ho replied. "Whatever it costs. I'll hire a full-time medical team. I'll bring in equipment. Whatever she needs." And he did. Within a week, the modest Hanok house had been transformed. A medical suite disguised as a bedroom. A team of nurses working in shifts. Oxygen tanks hidden in handcrafted cabinets. Pain medications stored in traditional Celadon pottery. The best palliative care specialists in Korea consulting via video calls each morning. But most importantly, the house was filled with music again. On good days, Mi-suk could play her cello for short periods, seated by the window overlooking the sea. On bad days, when the pain was too great, Jin-ho would play recordings of her old concerts, the speakers filling the house with the music of her youth, her passion, her true self. Jin-ho's assistant called on the 3rd week, her voice desperate. "Mr. Park, the board is threatening to remove you as CEO. The Busan merger collapsed. The stock has dropped 18%. They're calling for an emergency vote of no confidence." "Let them," Jin-ho replied. "The company will survive without me. Or it won't. Either way, I'm where I need to be." He hung up and returned to Mi-suk's bedside, where he was helping her sort through old photographs. "That was about the company?" she asked. "It's not important." Mi-suk touched his hand. 20 years of your life is important, Jin-ho. Your father's legacy. Your life's work. None of it matters compared to this time with you." She studied his face, searching for the truth. "I want to believe you. Then believe this." He showed her the papers he had signed that morning. Legal documents transferring control of Park Industries to a board of trustees, with the majority of profits directed to a new foundation, the Mi-suk Park Foundation for Music and Healing. Why would you do that? Mi-suk whispered, tears filling her eyes. Because I finally understand what matters. Not the company or the money or the next acquisition. You. The time we have left. As the weeks passed, Jin-ho learned more about his wife than he had in 20 years of marriage. He learned that she preferred the sunrise to the sunset, that she could name every constellation in the winter sky, that she had composed music in secret all these years, beautiful melodies that she had never shared with him. He learned the names of her childhood friends, stories of her grandmother who had raised her in this very house, dreams she had abandoned to be his wife. He learned about the children they might have had, the daughter she would have named after her grandmother, the son she imagined would have his determination but her sensitivity. One evening, as the autumn leaves began to turn, they sat on the wooden veranda overlooking the sea. Mi-suk wrapped in blankets against the chill, Jin-ho beside her, their hands intertwined. I need to tell you something, she said, her voice weaker now as the disease progressed despite all the treatments money could buy. Anything. I forgive you. Jin-ho's eyes filled with tears. I don't deserve it. That's not how forgiveness works, Mi-suk replied with a small smile. It's not earned. It's given. And I give it freely. She squeezed his hand. But I need you to promise me something. Anything, he repeated. When I'm gone, don't go back to who you were. Don't hide in work and ambition. Find a way to live that honors what we've found these past weeks. Find a way to help others see what you've seen before it's too late for them too. Jin-ho brought her hand to his lips. I promise. Winter came early to the coast that year. The doctors had given Mi-suk weeks, but she had fought for months, clinging to life with the same quiet determination with which she had once played the most difficult cello concertos. But even the strongest spirit cannot defeat terminal cancer. As the first snow fell over Jumunjin, Mi-suk's strength began to fade rapidly. The pain medications no longer gave her many lucid hours. The cello sat untouched, her fingers too weak to press the strings. On a clear December night, with the stars unusually bright over the East Sea, Mi-suk woke from a morphine-induced sleep and found Jin-ho beside her, as always. Play for me, she whispered. What should I play? My cello. The piece I composed for you. Jin-ho shook his head. I don't know how. Then learn. Now. Tonight. While I can still teach you. And so, in the quiet hours of that winter night, Mi-suk guided Jin-ho's hands on her beloved instrument. His fingers were clumsy, the notes discordant at first, but slowly, under her patient instruction, he learned to draw a single, pure note from the strings. One note, the beginning of a melody she had written decades ago, when their love was new and full of promise. A melody he had never heard until these final days together. That's it, she whispered as dawn approached. Remember how that feels. The pressure, the release. Like life. Jin-ho continued playing that single note as Mi-suk's eyes drifted closed, a peaceful smile on her face. He played until his fingers bled, until the note became a prayer, until the morning light spilled through the window and touched her face for the last time. Mi-suk Park died as the sun rose over the East Sea, her husband beside her, the music of her life's one true love filling the room they had shared too briefly. 3 years later, the Mi-suk Park Center for Music Therapy opened its doors in Seoul, a modernist building of glass and wood, with views of the mountains and the city she had once called home. Inside, children with terminal illnesses found comfort in music. Parents learned to connect with their sick children through rhythm and melody. Workaholic executives attended mandatory workshops on balance and presence, sponsored by Korea's largest corporations. And in a small studio on the top floor, Jin-ho Park, the former CEO who had given away his fortune and his power, taught beginning cello to cancer patients. One note at a time. The same note Mi-suk had taught him on her final night. His hair had gone completely gray. His designer suits replaced by simple clothing. His imperious manner transformed into quiet patience. The ruthless businessman had died alongside his wife, replaced by a man who measured wealth in moments, not one. Each evening, after the center closed, Jin-ho would take his wife's cello to the rooftop garden. There, overlooking the city where he had once built an empire of glass and steel and indifference, he would play the single note she had taught him, over and over, each time a little more confident, a little more pure. One note, a reminder, promise kept. Some say that on clear nights, when the stars are bright over Seoul, that single note can be heard drifting above the city noise. A lesson too late for one man, but perhaps just in time for someone else who might be listening. How many calls are you ignoring right now? How many moments are slipping past while you build an empire no one will remember? The most valuable currency isn't measured in $1 or dollars. It's measured in the time we give to those we claim to love. Jin Ho Park learned this lesson almost too late. How many of us are making the same mistake right now?